Now that we know about fabrics, it is time to learn about how to pick out a quilt design. Um, I I am one of those people. I don't believe you need a pattern. You just need a block. So remember how we were talking about how this is a block. This is the block. So you're gonna make a bunch of these. That's what quilting is. So quilting is just broken down into smaller pieces and then is put together in a way that makes a design. So um so I have some examples I'm gonna show you. You just need to pick out a block, right? And I'm gonna show you how many, like, all the cool stuff you can do with a block. Um so that's one block. Um so remember this quilt. This quilt is made up of a bunch of these. This is called a 9 patch. So it's got 9 squares. And so I put it together, and we'll talk about this too in a minute, in a certain way to where it creates the design. You also don't have to do that either. I could have just put a bunch of these together, kind of willy-nilly. It would have looked just as good. But I chose to do it in a pattern, and I'll show you what that pattern is in a sec. So let me see. This is Jamie's quilt that is not anywhere near finished. He's very cold. So the block in this is actually pretty big. I had to move my coffee. So let me see if I can show it to you without knocking everything off. So the block on this is actually, where does it go to? It goes to here. Is this big. And so I made 9 of those to make this this quilt. So it's more of like, it's a little bit bigger than a crib quilt. Yeah, so it goes from here down. So it's a pretty large quilt block, right? But this is also made up of smaller blocks. So like there's a 9 patch here, 9 patch here, here, and then there's I'll show you in a sec. There's some flying geese patterns in here to make the pattern. Next time you come visit, we can look at this. And so my idea on this quilt was that it would all be white. If you look really closely, there are some variations. In the white, there's like one color white and another color white. But I wanted it to be almost like a whole cloth quilt, where the design was in the stitching, not in the fabric. So that's kind of like the idea I had here. I think it's worked out pretty well. So anyway, so that was kind of like my design with this, and the idea I had while I was making it. So move that out of the way. Okay, so I have some examples. So, like I said, I prefer traditional quilts, traditional patterns. This is a cool pattern. It's a really easy one. It looks complicated, but it's not. This is actually a really good example. So this is called the log cabin block. It's a really poignant little block. So it traditionally has a red square in the middle, and that red square represents the hearth of the home, and the dark side represents the hard times in your life, and the lighter side represents the good parts of your life and in your home. It's a really, I like the idea of it. So this is actually really easy to do, and I can definitely show you. And there are things all over the internet. You can find how big to make each one of these strips. That's the same thing with most traditional popular quilts designs, so popular quilt blocks. You can find how big to cut things online. You don't really need a pattern. So this is the cool part about design, okay? This blew my mind. Okay, so this is what the log cabin quilt looks like if you just put all your blocks together. It's cute, right? It's cute. It's fun. Or, look at this. This is wild. This is the same block, but it's just put together in a different way to create this like secondary and tertiary pattern. And then here's some other examples. So this was put in a way to where it made a zigzag. This is put in a way that it makes zigzags, or I'm sorry, diagonals. So just because like you have a block doesn't mean you have to do it like this. So once you get all your blocks made, you can kind of play with them a little bit, like put them on the floor and move them around and see if there's any other way that you could put the blocks to make this other pattern. So this looks really complicated, but it's not. It's just this. And so I'll show you some other thing, something else. Hold on, let me grab it. So this is the quilt that I want to make Henry. So my block right here is called, it's a traditional block, it's called Crosses and Losses. But if you turn the block, boop, boop, it makes this insane pattern. And it's just this, just turned different ways. And so what you can do, and I would encourage you to do this, get some graph paper, find a block, and just play around with like, what would it look like if I did this, or what if I turned it a different way, and just try to explore it a little bit. Maybe try inverting the colors, and I have an example of that. So let me cover some of this up. We're not there yet. So I found this quilt block. I thought it'd be a really good one to show an example. So this is the block right here. And then this is if you inverted the colors. It's very different. And that can be a choice. Like you can decide to do that. So this is actually a pretty easy block, and I'll show you in a sec. It's down here. So just by changing the colors, which one's light, which one's dark, you can really make an entirely new, more intricate design. So I know. So like this would be like what it would look like generally all put together. So that's with one color, or with the colors inverted, and then this is the original. So like they look the same, but you could really do something with this, right? So get some graph paper, find a traditional pattern block, and just play around with it and see. This doesn't have a lot of directionality to it, so like you're kind of like stuck with like just like changing the colors. Unlike unlike this one, where you could really like switch it up back and forth, and really try to create something like this. Or you can, there's one where it goes like this. It's actually called a barn raising quilt. That's the name of it. All right, so play around with it. Find some traditional blocks. I'd be happy to send you some. Just let me know. And play around with it. You got, because that's the creative part. That is the design part, and that's what's really fun. So what I did with this guy is, it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I decided that I played around with it. So I made a bunch of these 9 patches, right? I made a bunch of these blocks, and I played around with it, and I thought about it, blah blah blah, and I ended up landing on doing a diagonal. So let's just pretend this stuff isn't there. Okay, so this is my block right here. This. So I decided that I was going to make a bigger block out of the little blocks. And I just was like, okay, I'm just going to start with a diagonal. And so what I did is I decided to do dark, medium, lighter, and lightest on both sides. So dark, medium, light, and lightest. And so I made 4 of these, right? And I did realize that it's complicated. I was gonna have to make some of them a different way just to get the diagonals right and my directionality right. This is upside down right now. So you can see this secondary pattern like coming to light. So basically what's going to happen is once I get another row done, I'm going to have like dark squares, and then I'm going to end up having like these light squares too. So it's going to end up looking really interesting, I think. So yeah, I'm just playing around with it. Just play around and figure out like, okay, the colors here, colors there. And that's the fun part. I'm gonna be real with you. It's really fun trying to figure out like how you're gonna set it up. And I did print off some other pictures just to show you like how you can use color to design your quilt. So like these are just squares. This is like a patchwork quilt, but she or whoever it is decided to start with like white here and like ombre down to like dark, and that looks really cool. So it's not just your typical patchwork. It's a lot more intentional. And then you have something like this over here, which is really interesting as well. So it's very simple, very minimalistic, and then like you have like this really interesting like use of color here and design. So you can see like these little like tree things here, but then there's like this whole like arrow thing, and that's a really interesting design. So it just kind of like mixes it up. Down here you have something that's a lot more monochromatic, but you can see how it's white and then it kind of ombres out. So you can use color this way. Same here. I actually really love the use of color. So having spots where it just kind of like there's a lot of motion in this quilt, and it's really interesting. And the block's real simple. So the block is just this, right? And she has a secondary block here that doesn't have a star. And they're not even, they're placed randomly almost. So, so when you're thinking about like what type of quilt you want to do, go ahead and like draw it out and play with it. And you know, as you get into it more, you can start really designing like cool stuff like this, you know. And it doesn't just have to be like you make a blog like, where's George's, like this, and you just go boop 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 and you're done. You can actually play with this a little bit more. Like, so like I was saying in the other video, like I thought about doing this square, like some with just all this purple, red, and then designing it that way, but I didn't really like that. So I decided to keep it random. I could have done like some cool thing like this. I just chose not to. So it's definitely, it's what you want to do, and that's what's so great about quilting, is like you get to design it, you get to be creative, and it's not that hard. Just sit down and play around with some blocks. I have never used a pattern before, so I am not sure, like if you were to go to Joann's and like buy a pattern, I've never used one, so I would have to like look at it with you, because I don't know. I literally don't know. So the other thing that you need to know about, besides design and picking blocks and stuff, is that these really complicated blocks, things that look a lot more complicated, are actually like not, they're actually broken down. So like I was saying, like you could have, so blocks are made up of smaller blocks. So this is a block, 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 and then you sew all that together to get one big one, right? So I wanted to show you, I hope this is not confusing. So this block right here, or this one, it's only made out of 4 different pieces. So you have your large white square, which is going to be this. You have your colored square, which is going to be your middle. And then you have 2 flying geese. So this right here is called a flying geese. Okay, so it's like a big triangle with 2 little triangles. That's probably what these are made out of. They're probably a bunch of flying geese. All the way down. Just changing the colors. So this is also a flying geese too. These are real easy to make, and they're made out of half square triangles. This is pretty foundational. You can make 1,000 of these and make an insane looking quilt just by turning them different directions. So so if you were cutting this out, you would I guess technically there's really only 3 pieces. So, you know, you have your large white square, your large colored square, and then you just make a bunch of these. And then just depending on how you turn it, you can make, those are the same square, just turned differently. And then you just sew them together. So this, it looks so complicated. Like, how do you make a star? It's 3 pieces. And you just put them together in a certain way. So down here, I also have another one to show you, another example. So this is actually Jay's quilt that I showed you that was like all monochromatic. This is the actual block itself. So you can see it has a 9 patch. And it is got a flying geese, right? So you got your 9 patch, you got your white block in the middle, you got your flying geese. And then this right here, this is just 4 triangles sewn together. You could also just make this, you could do flying geese here. Like, so like right here, if you wanted to, you could make that a flying geese and then that a flying geese. And then you would just sew those 2 together, right? So it's just a different way to skin a cat, honestly. So you could do it this way, where it's just 4 triangles. You could split that in half even further and make those 2. So while this looks super complicated, it's really only made up of a couple of pieces that gives you this like design. So don't be intimidated by like patterns and traditional blocks, because it's not really a lot of pieces. It's just the pieces are put together in a certain order. And so yeah, so what else was I going to talk about in design? I can't remember. But yeah, so start here. Get some graph paper. I just printed this off the internet. And play around with some stuff. Figure it out. You know, learn about some traditional quilting. I think you should start with this one. This is a really good one. It's super, super easy, and you can do some really cool stuff with it. So yeah, that is design, and you don't need a pattern. The only thing is, you'll just have to figure out what your measurements are, and that's super easy to do.